Let's first start with the basis of who I am, which is the formation of my opinions, which comes from my upbringing. I am a small-town, middle-class Texas girl. I was born the middle child of 3 daughters. My father was a car salesman, and my mother worked at a chemical plant as a supply controller. He's from a German heritage, she's from an American Indian heritage, which means I'm extremely hardworking and very hot-headed. What I did experience in my upbringing was I never felt the limitation of being a girl, and here's why. My father had a strong desire to have a son. He wanted a work buddy for the weekends, and I just threw myself into this role. I volunteered gladly. Any way to get out of the house and out of cooking, I was in. So, my first job was at age 6. I was responsible for folding the clothes in the house every single Sunday. The next job I had was in the lawn. This was about age 10. I was responsible for mowing, pulling, chopping, sweeping, and burning. At 12, I graduated to operating heavy machinery like the tractor. I was also the one that crawled under the house with the spiders and the pipe wrench to fix the kitchen sink, or install a wall, or scale the tree with a chainsaw to trim it because my father was afraid of heights, or work together with him to refurbish American classic muscle cars. My favorite was his 1970s Mustang Fastback. In this, my father taught me 3 key things. There is an endless amount of hard work to do in life, and most of it is dirty, and it's tedious, and most times it's boring. But if you do it, every once in a while, you get to do fun work, and it's kind of the gift. The last piece he taught me is that if you're going to do it right, because your work is you. It's your brand. It's the quality of who you are. While my father had my weekends, my mother and my grandmother heavily influenced my nights. And similar to girls here in Turkey, I was filled in my evenings with a life of crafts and hobbies. My hands could never be still. My grandmother and my mother believed if your child needed a costume for school, you made it. If your child wanted a pretty picture on her wall, you painted it. If you wanted to give something that they wouldn't throw away or sell in a garage sale, like an heirloom, to your child, and they would give it to their child, and it would be the memory of you, the representation of your work quality and your brand, you built it with your hands. What these 2 special women gave me was a connection to my life. By the act of creating with my hands, I not only feel a deep sense of satisfaction, I felt what my real life was. I also learned problem solving. I believe the arts are an amazing way to solve problems. Here's why. You start with nothing and you end with something beautiful. That's a difficult challenge. If we look at my career, I was the only member of my family to graduate from college, an electrical engineering degree about 1 million years ago. In 1984, which I paid for myself by working and going to school and live with my grandparents at the time, which actually made me be extremely disciplined and controlled. Living with your grandparents in college is an insane thing to do, but I did it. Next, I joined Intel in 1984. They were a memory company, not a computer company. They hadn't invented all that stuff yet. So I was a founding member of the global revolution of computers, the PC revolution, and then we did it again with notebooks. Actually, 17 years ago, I worked on the first smartphone design, which we didn't know was a smartphone. It was just a bad design. We shut it down, mothballed it, and it sat for 10 years. And along came Pilot and did it better, and then RIM, and then Apple. Then, after 24 years, I threw myself out of Intel. I moved to Turkey, and I joined Casper. Why would I do this? There were 2 pivotal points in my career. One happened in my early 20s. The must-go-to company in my 20s was IBM. You could be a lifer at IBM. Start your career, and for the next 30 years, just rise, rise, rise through the ranks. It was amazing, a dream. And that's exactly what it was. When I was about 28, they changed their strategy, and they started to lay off people. And those people were in their 40s and their 50s. Their entire career had been in IBM, and they were not ready. The second event was with my father. As he got close to 50, his car dealership told him they didn't need him as their sales manager. I think they were going to hire someone younger for about the third the price. And it killed him, meaning he went through this cathartic struggle of having to find himself. What happened to both of them? Their companies took control of their careers. And at that moment, I said, I will invent a timeline, and never will I give my control to any other human as far as my career goes. My daughter completely controls my timeline now. So the first in the timeline is college. It's freedom. You are poor, you have no money, but you are completely free. You're learning to learn. You're doing your self-discovery and hopefully a little bit of self-control. The next phase is your first career phase. I call this cool because you are young, dynamic, innovative, fast-moving. This is where you learn to do the business. At the same time, you develop your professional ethics, your goals, your value system. After that comes your powerful period. This is where you're managing the business, and your contributions actually have a measurable impact to the company you work in. You're also responsible to begin to develop the next generation of leaders. Then, hopefully, we all have a third phase. This is the thing my father hadn't prepared for. This is the one where we get to be confident, where we know what we know, and we're in our skin, and we're comfortable with it. And we get to do a job we love, not for the money, but because we want to give back. We want to give our leadership, our knowledge. We want to contribute. And for some of it, it's in a philanthropic way. In some of us, it's in an artistic way. I hope I get there. I'm at the beginning stages. So let's spend the rest of my speech and talk about that early phase. So that I don't get lost and surprised, I put these by age to guide myself. I was free from 19 to 22. I was so drop-dead, amazing, wall-to-wall cool from 23 to 35. I was powerful, 35 to 45, for me about 47. And from 45, as long as I can work or have the desire to and the energy, 60, 65, 55, somewhere in there, I will be confident. So let's focus on phase one and the questions I had to deal with, which you will deal with similar questions. First, I had to discover what am I good at? What do I do well? And more importantly, what do I not do well and why? What I did was, as an engineer, I built a systematic list. If I did a task well, I wrote it on a list that says, these are duties I do naturally. It's instinctive on my skin. I excel at it. I should find jobs that have these skills. Things I didn't do well, I would analyze. They come into two buckets. One is, it's a skill gap. Then I would find someone around me that had that same skill, and I would learn it. I would watch them, observe, then do it. The other one was lack of ability because of lack of passion, lack of interest. That would go on a list also. Anytime I would come across a new job, I would look at those two lists. If it had too many of the things I don't like, no matter how shiny and sexy the title, I avoided that job because it wouldn't be coming from my heart. It wouldn't be natural. I would struggle every day to get out of bed and do that job. The next thing I had to do was unwire and rewire my brain over this very serious confusion of the difference between like and respect. This is an issue for girls more than boys. Our moms tell us that people like nice people. So what did I do? I put on my suit, I went into my professional office, and I served the coffee. I ran around and got the papers. I did everything so everybody would like me. And I thought that was going to get me promoted. When I look back on it, that was the dumbest thing ever. And what were men doing? They were sitting and they were talking together and they were discussing the decisions, and the youngest ones would have an opinion. And they would voice the opinion even when it wasn't popular, because they understood the difference. It was about respect. It's not about like. If people respect you and they don't like you, it's okay. If people respect you and they like you, hey, it's cool. But at least you're respected. Don't make the same mistake I made. The next, who can teach me? This was about the journey, the 5-year journey of finding someone called a mentor, figuring out what a mentor was, and then realizing they're not all embodied in one person. I couldn't find her. She was a lot like my mom, but she wasn't in my workplace. The mentor is the person that helps you unwire your brain and what's holding you back to make the next big jump. You'll need 3 to 4 of them. They all have to have an expertise, and please do yourself a favor. Don't be biased by gender. Most of my great mentors in my life, they were men. Last, individual versus a manager. This is going to cause you a lot of self-doubt, and it did me too. What I found was I loved to do a job for about 2 to 3 years, and then I wanted to jump to do something new. I started in sales, and after 3 years, I jumped to marketing. After marketing, I jumped to major accounts marketing, and I kept doing this. And by the 3rd job, I noticed I was still an individual contributor. But people that had picked a vertical specialist track like operations and stayed in operations, by my 3rd job, they already had the manager title. And I had to question why. Was I failing? And then I understood, no, I wasn't. I was making the journey about growing. I was making the journey about learning something completely new from scratch, and that was the fun. Do you know the first time, I stand here as a CEO today, you know the first time I had a manager title on my name? I was 36 years old. 2 years later, I was a director. 2 years after that, they gave me worldwide responsibility. And the reason was I had spent that 12 years investing in doing this individual track and working as hard as I could. Now, I want to share with you what I think are 4 of your unique challenges that I didn't have. And it's something about your Turkishness. And forgive me if I don't get it exactly correct. My intentions are good. First is you'll have committees or parents or somebody that's making too many of your decisions, and it's slowing you down. And for many of you, the first time you're going to face decision-making independently, your money and a company's money is going to be tied to it. And that's got incredible stress and risk for you. Understand it now. Make as many decisions as you can now. Learn when you fail and why you failed. Don't slow down. And when you hit the professional world, you're going to have to push yourself pretty hard, because the natural reaction that I'm seeing from young professionals here, you want to give away the decision to someone else because you're not comfortable with the risk. You're given power and you don't want it. How crazy is that? The next is, if your decision making has been delayed, so has your self-improvement. Anytime I made a decision and I failed, I was forced to analyze why. They go hand in hand. Classic example, I interview so many new people from college, and I asked 2 questions. Tell me 3 things you're amazingly good at, which they do. Boom, boom, boom. Very quick. Tell me 3 things that you totally, truly, deeply suck at. It doesn't have to be your work life. It could be anything. If I called your mom and your mom said, you know, he really sucks at these 3 things, what would she say? Well, the classic thing is they will say, well, I work too hard, and I'm not patient with people, and I don't have a 3rd one. And I looked at them and said, you're kidding me. You've only got 2 problems, and the rest of you is perfect. And you're 24 years old. It's not a test of what's on the list. It's a test of the awareness. You must push yourselves very hard to be aware at what you need to improve, because you're responsible. The next is directness. Oh, goodness. Every communication we have has a small core of truth, and then there's a giant layer of emotion wrapped around it. And getting through that is so hard because everybody has an emotional filter on. So you have to say things in order to protect the people, not the company, and not the right thing to do. You also need to train yourself and teach yourself to be kind, respectful, but direct. Because your goal isn't that they like you. Your goal is that they respect you. Finally is titles. There's a bit of confusion on titles and the importance of titles. These are shiny things. I didn't have a title till 36. It wasn't important to me. The journey was important. The learning was important. Doing amazing things were important because it made me powerful. Power is the goal, not the title. So, let's wrap up. 5 things I used in my career and in my life that guide me. The first is quality. My smallest task gets my best quality. Because everybody assumes my biggest task is going to get my best quality because it's visible. But they also assume I'm going to cut the corners and be lazy and not do the best on the smallest, and that's wrong. The next is urgency. This has to come from a fire in your belly, if I use the Texas slang, and that is that when you get a task in your professional life, you start the work and you never stop until it's done. It doesn't matter how many hours it works. If 6 o'clock and your time is done, then take your computer home with you and do it. And that becomes your gold standard of how you operate. The next one is mirroring. I noticed that some guys got ahead and I couldn't understand why. At first I thought, okay, so there's a boys club here. And then I thought maybe it's this glass ceiling thing everybody's talking about. And then I understood, it took me about 5 years, I understood that some people are just master communicators. And what they do is when they're talking to their boss, they listen to their words and they give their words back to them. And whatever their boss's style is, they give those words back to the boss as well. And what happens is, and this is actually a training technique I use, what happens is the back of the brain relaxes. Ah, he gets me. He totally gets me. And he's going to operate because he knows how my mind works and he knows what I expect. And she knows what I expect. So once I do that, once I relax, I release control. And when I release control is the magic time. Because then I give, and it doesn't matter your age with me. The faster you can play back to me, the faster I will give you control. Then you can take what you know of me, and you can add you, and 1 + 1 isn't 2, it's 3. Because you've got the magic of me, and you've got the magic of you. The last one is one that you won't feel at the beginning unless you're just an incredible person, and that's love for your coworkers. I was a results-driven person based on that urgency thing and the quality thing. I was going to run as fast as I could, and whoever was with me, great, come along. If they weren't, I was still going. And then I understood about 34, 35 years of age that there were stars rising in the company the same way I was, but I was not together with them. And that if I got together with them, then the group of us would rise in the company, and we could actually change the company. We could change the world. So to do that, I actually had to care about them. I figured out that I had to bring not just my mind, but my heart to my job. And I had to actually care about their success. Now, I refuse to accept when they're lazy and they don't want to fix something about themselves. But if they had a blind spot, which we all have, I would cover it. And then they would know, they could trust me, and they would cover my blind spot. And then the power of us as a collective would rise in the company. They were not my competitor, they were my partner. With that, it's the end of my talk. Sorry for the beginning. Rough start. Thanks for your time, and good luck with your professional journey.